gonna help me take it out. You're gonna help me take this out.
Harper, do you recognize Sarah Boone at the defense table with Tony Henderson?
I do.
When did you first get involved with Miss Boone?
It would have been in around June of 2020. It was the first I heard of her case.
And what were you asked to do?
A comprehensive psychological evaluation of Ms. Boone.
And did you do that in Miss Boone's case?
I did.
Okay. How many times did you meet with Sarah Boone?
So 9 times.
Now, do you believe that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
I do.
She doesn't qualify or meet the criteria for that diagnosis, does she?
I did not diagnose her with that.
All right. Can you elaborate on or explain how you feel that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
Well, in meeting with her as part of the evaluation, the narcissistic traits that I identified would have to do with, as she described, being a straight-A student. She reiterated about her abilities, and I felt that that was evidence that she had low self-esteem, and her coping mechanism was to identify what made her stand out, and that would be consistent with a narcissistic trait.
Just for purposes to make it clear, you did not diagnose her with narcissism, that disorder.
That's correct, because the DSM's description guided me that that would not be an appropriate diagnosis.
Why did you not diagnose Ms. Boone with a personality disorder?
Well, first of all, it has to be a pervasive pattern of distorted relational abilities. So basically, if she is demonstrating in a variety of settings that she has these symptoms. And then secondarily, the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder is listed when you're considering personality disorders. The DSM guides you that if there are personality changes that are associated with the exposure to a trauma, then you should consider post-traumatic stress disorder and not a personality disorder.
Have you diagnosed her with anything? And we'll elaborate on that, but through your assessment, have you diagnosed her with anything?
Yes, so she has a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. She has symptoms of anxiety that would be consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that is an anxiety disorder.
And you feel like she suffers from post-traumatic stress?
I do.
Now, as it relates to Sarah Boone, what type of psychological testing did you administer?
I administered the inventory of legal knowledge, and that is a test that has to do with whether or not she was validly participating regarding her understanding of the legal process. I also administered the Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test.
Now, explain to the jury what that Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test is.
So that is also a test of feigning to identify if she's validly participating in the evaluation. So if she had endorsed psychological symptoms or psychiatric symptoms that would be unusual or not typical of a valid psychiatric patient.
What were the results of Ms. Boone's test on the Miller Forensic?
She validly participated. There was no indication of any feigning or malingering.
And as far as the inventory of legal knowledge case, what were the results?
Again, she was validly participating, and she did not even come close to the cutoff that would put her in the range of fainting.
At the time that you administered that test, did Ms. Boone in fact have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well,
Or tell me the results. Just
yes,
explain.
so the results would be consistent with a person having post-traumatic stress disorder. I do not diagnose from one test, that wouldn't be appropriate, but it is consistent with the background and the symptoms that I had previously, taken down during my evaluation of her. So the clinical portion, when we go through symptoms, that was consistent with the outcome of that test.
And would this testing, all the testing, help you determine if Ms. Boone had a change in functioning from before the alleged trauma
Bless you.
to after the alleged trauma? And I'm referring to the trauma. We're going to talk about what the trauma was, but the trauma was the intimate partner violence?
That's correct.
Okay. But would that testing help to determine if she had a change in functioning from that trauma of the intimate partner violence?
Absolutely.
And did you determine that she did suffer from a trauma as a result of intimate partner violence?
That was my conclusion. Yes, that's my opinion.
Did you diagnose Sarah Boone with anything?
Yes, so post-traumatic stress disorder, it's my opinion at the time of the offense, she had depression and she had an alcohol use disorder.
All right. I know we've talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if I need to ask you anything further. I think the jury probably understands that. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that disorder?
I'm not sure what the jury's already been told about post-traumatic stress disorder, but in Sarah Boone's case specifically, because of enduring, she specifically noted the time that she was stabbed with the knife as being an extremely...
Sustained.
You have viewed some exhibits involving her being stabbed?
I think that we have had exhibits in common. I'm not sure what was admitted.
Have you seen the physical scar from Sarah Boone being stabbed in the back of the leg?
Yes, I've seen her scar.
Overruled.
Just generally, without getting specific, I think I've explained post-traumatic stress, but if there's something else the jury you believe the jury needs to know, but it's a sort of trauma that occurs as a result of one or more events.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is the psychological after effect of being exposed to a very significant stressor or cumulative stressors that make the person's behavior, thinking, and mood change. And so the change can include things like the person becomes hypervigilant, is easily startled, has trouble thinking, has trouble sleeping, so their body is in a state of agitation. It can also include changes in mood that would include irritability, difficulty relating to others, and that they might be resistant to trust easily. So those are all
They have
features.
trouble sleeping sometimes.
Yes.
Sleep deprivation is a real issue.
It's associated with things like nightmares and having trouble settling.
Now, you mentioned that you had diagnosed her with depression. Can you just give us a general understanding for the jury of depression?
So the persistent sad mood, including feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, having difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, changes in appetite, those would be typical of depression.
And Sarah Boone suffered from that?
Near the time of the offense, yes.
All right, can you explain to the jury alcohol use disorder? That's a fairly new name. That's 5 or 6 years ago. The manual came up with a different name.
It did, right. And so that would be, in layman's terms, you might call that alcoholism. It's a tendency to drink too much and then have some kind of consequence in your life as a result of your substance use.
And alcoholism can be depending on how much you drink and then how often you drink.
That's right.
All all that is something that you would consider in diagnosing?
Yes.
And I know you've gone over this event with Sarah Boone, this February 23rd, 2020 event. Is your opinion that she was suffering from battered spouse syndrome at the time of that event?
Yes, she had the patterns ingrained in her behavior that would be typical of a victim who's responding to traumatic events in a predictable way. So that would fit that.
And it's fair to say that because of the intimate partner and the prior violence, that you would have a heightened sense of when danger was about to occur?
Yes.
When a threat was about to occur?
Yes.
Now, in reviewing all of the data, all the reports, medical records, and whatever reports you considered, videotape that you may have watched, as it relates specifically to Sarah Boone, are her words her power?
Her words, I would say, are the weapon that she has.
Explain that to the jury.
In reviewing the available videos that I had to review, you would see that when Ms. Boone is very stressed, when she's experiencing a high level of anxiety, she becomes short in her tone. You can hear that in her voice. There's a strain, sharper words come out. I think that that is the way that she would try to respond to Mr. Torres. You can hear that sharpness in her voice when she's very stressed out.
Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
What did you say?
Can you state and spell your name for the record
Pearl
for us?
Walker. Pearl Walker, Walker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Beck, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Walker. Ms. Walker, do you know the defendant, Sarah Boone?
Yes.
How do you know her, ma'am? How do you know Ms. Boone? If you can't hear me, just ask me to repeat myself, and I'll
Okay.
do so.
Okay.
How do you know Ms. Boone?
She lived in the same apartment building that I lived in.
And can you tell us how long the two of you shared the same apartment complex, apartment buildings?
About 4 years.
And how is it that you became familiar with Ms. Boone?
My husband and I was sitting out on the porch, and we see her coming with her 2 dogs.
And what happened then?
Then I would call her over with with her dogs.
And what do you mean by call her over?
When I see her walking with a dog, and I see her and I look at her, and I said, "Hey, Sarah, how you doing?" And that's it.
Would you spend time with Ms. Boone?
Did I spend time?
Would you spend time speaking with Ms. Boone?
Yes.
How long would you speak with her?
About 15 or 20 minutes. That's all.
And was your husband sometimes involved in those conversations as well?
He just say hi.
In the time that you knew Ms. Boone, did you witness anything about her person or her body that gave you cause for concern?
Sometimes I would see it like she had been choked around her neck or her arm be hurt. I have a mark on her arm. And I just asked her.
And would she describe how that happened?
She just say, I had a...
Hey, hang on.
Understand.
The objection is sustained.
When you would ask her that, how did she appear to you to respond emotionally to your questions about her injuries?
She just say, one of them days or something.
Objection sustained.
I would say, on the weekends when I see her.
Was that primarily when you saw her on the weekends?
Mostly I would see her walking through, going to her place, and and I'm sitting on the porch and I see her then.
Now, strike that. while you were there in that apartment complex, and excuse me for getting ahead of myself, do you still live in that apartment complex?
No,
How long have you been gone from that apartment complex? If you don't know, that's fine.
oh, it's been a while.
Thank you, ma'am. During the occasions that you had to interact with Ms. Boone, how did she treat you?
She was a nice lady,
Overruled.
nice to me.
Did she ever act uppity?
Objection. Relevance.
Overruled.
Did she ever treat you in an uppity manner?
What you mean, sir?
Did she ever look down on you as a person?
Oh, no,
Did she ever treat you with disrespect?
no.
I'm going to object. This is character evidence.
Sustained.
May I approach on this, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm back, Mrs. Walker. In the time that you and Ms. Boone lived together, on occasion, did you see law enforcement arrive at the apartment complex?
A couple of times.
And did you ever get involved in any of their investigation?
No, sir.
Were you ever approached by law enforcement and asked for information, evidence, insight into what might be going on?
No, sir.
Now, in all candor, were there occasions when you believed that Sarah Boone may have been under the influence of alcohol?
No, I can't say.
Did you also observe George Torres during the time that you lived there in the apartment complex?
I didn't see him very much. If we sitting on the porch, that's the only time I see him.
Did you know Mr. Torres very well?
No,
Was there an incident when you saw Ms. Boone with a black eye?
yes,
Did you witness a pattern between Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres wherein you observed signs of abuse?
Objection. Foundation.
Sustained.
You testified that you saw Ms. Boone on occasion with bruises, other injuries, and a black eye. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
yes.
And was there any pattern to what you observed in regards to those injuries and bruises that you observed on Ms. Boone?
One time I seen with a black eye and like she had been choked one time.
Okay. Did Ms. Boone complain to you about those marks?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Any cross-examination?
Hi, Ms. Walker.
Oh,
Is it fair to say you're not sure when exactly you saw any of those injuries on her, correct?
say that again?
You're not exactly sure when you saw any of those injuries on her, correct?
Once she come past the apartment, I'll be sitting out there because we always sit out there.
Right, but we don't know if this is December or 2018 or anything
I
like that.
can't remember, sir.
Okay. And is it fair to say you have no idea how she got those marks? Is that fair?
Repeat that again?
Do you have any idea how she got those marks?
On the weekends, I see him and her go in.
Okay. But you don't know who, if anybody, put those marks on her, right?
Well,
Just calls for yes or no.
I can tell when they must have had an argument or something. I hear the dogs barking.
Okay. And you're 5 doors down, right? Unit 8, Unit 3?
Yeah.
No other questions?
Any redirect examining?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ms. Walker, the deputies are going to come get you and take you out, okay?
You all done?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.